For the light infantrymen, I think the canteen still reigns top for line 2 gear, and I think that, from my experience with camelbacks and canteens, that I can at least speak to the advantages and disadvantages of both the canteen and the camelback, and from my experience, canteens reign king, and I think you'll see why by the end of this video, but we're going to talk about TTPs for canteens and generally water in general. So, with that said, let's talk about function checking a canteen. This is going to mostly apply to one core canteen since they're mostly what you're going to see, but 2 quarts would also fit into a lot of these TTPs as well. So first thing you want to do with any canteen is when you get it, leave it empty, but you want to get it finger tight, tighten it as much as you can, and then hold it up to your ear and squeeze it. If you hear air rushing, you might want to replace, put an O-ring in the cap, like with these civilian caps right here, these little aftermarket caps. You might want to put an O-ring in them. You can simply get them at Harbor Freight, Amazon, whatever. And so it's a pretty quick fix. So next thing you're going to want to do is when you actually fill it up, you don't need to fill it all the way. You can fill it like 3/4 the way or whatever, but you want to get it finger tight as you can get it. Set it upside down. Leave it there for, 5 minutes or whatever, come back and see if any water has trickled out, see if it's wetted down this area here. So it's kind of a hit or miss with ones like this that Sportsman Guide actually sells. So an upgrade for that is you could just buy like some of these surplus caps. They cost like $1 or $2 per, so it might be a worthy investment for you. But if you want, you can just put in an O-ring or something like that into the canteens. So, or just make sure you buy military canteens, used or new. So once you're done function checking and you've noted that it's serviceable and you like it, then you're going to want to clean the canteen. It's very simple. Fill it halfway. Give it a splash of bleach, and then you want to lightly cap so that some of the bleach water can actually get into the threads, and you want to shake it around for about 30 seconds. Tip it upside down. Make sure some of that water runs through the threads. Kind of spills out a little bit. That way you ensure the threads are actually getting wetted, and then just play with the cap. Twist it on and off while it's upside down and stuff like that. That way you're actually scrubbing the threads with that bleach water. And just play with it here and there, but do that for 30 seconds. And then you dump it out and, flush it, 5 or 6 times. Just fill it up with some fresh water, lightly cap it, and, that way the threads are getting washed off too. And then, flush it out 5 times like that or so. And repeat as necessary. If this thing is used or, maybe you put something in there that wasn't water entirely, then yeah, you're probably going to want to do that to make sure that you actually got all those things, bacteria or all those things that could grow culture out of there. And that's pretty much as easy as it is. So nothing really fancy needed there. So for filling a canteen, it's very simple. Top it off and actually get it to where when it's laying flat, it's actually overflowing with water before you cap it, and cap it slowly to ensure that you're not jarring it and throwing water around and splashing more. The goal with filling a canteen is you're filling it so when you cap it, when you shake it, you don't hear this. This one is not quite filled all the way. It's going like half up the cap just for kind of demonstration purposes, but canteens are echo chambers, just like camelbacks are. Anywhere where there's spare water and stuff and it can slosh around, it's going to be an echo chamber of activity. So canteens like this, it's filled up all the way and you don't hear anything. And it's not even filled up necessarily all the way because it's an NBC cap, so it's got that little cone on the inside, so it kind of fills up that air gap a little bit. But even if it has that cone, I like to fill it up to where it's overflowing and then put the cap on slowly as practical. So if you're filling it up from, a river or whatever, then it could be a little bit more tedious, but we'll get into that next. Now let's talk about canteen cups. Why would you carry a canteen cup? Well, it can do, pretty much 3 things. Number one, you can use it for actually pouring water, scooping water from, a mucky river or whatever into the canteen through a filtration, screen, whether that be, a t-shirt, cheesecloth, whatever. Next thing is you can mix drink mixes in there, or you can use it as another way of, purifying water through boiling. Now, as light infantry, you don't want to do the last two. Number one, you're not going to be sitting there and wanting to drink, mixing a bunch of stuff in a canteen and rattling it around by mixing it with a spoon or whatever, because that's kind of how MRE, drink mixes are. You're going to want to use like a beverage bag or something like that and just mix it that way and mix it slowly. It'll cause a lot less noise than dinging this thing around and ringing a bell as it would sound. It would sound like you're ringing a bell if you're going to be stirring it inside a canteen cup. As far as boiling water, you really want to resist the urge to be getting hot coffee and stuff like that. That's not really light infantry work if you're sitting there and boiling up hot coffee every morning. I'm sorry, Brent0331, but that is not light infantry to be doing that. But, your profile is low. You're there to do a job and get out. You're not there to bask in your caffeine fixes all the time. So, anyways, with that said, the biggest, aid, or the biggest function for this is to aid in filtration. So, let's go ahead and talk about that for a second. Let's talk about purification and filtration. So filtration is just getting out solid particulates. It's not really getting rid of like bacteria and stuff. You're going to need to do that through purification, whether that be through like boiling, which we talked about is a secondary function of this, which can be done in emergencies, but not on, a consistent operational, term, I guess you could say. That's more of a sustainment issue. Or a sustainment task. Chemical purification, whether it be through bleach or actual tablets, is going to be the way to go. Now let's talk about filtration. You want to have a filtration item on hand, and I recommend a rubber band and pantyhose ends. I have pantyhose that is the length of the height of a canteen, and the reason for this is I actually shove the pantyhose inside the canteen, and the closed end, of course. And then I have the open end, which I fold over the open end right here, and then I rubber band it to the cap. So before I dunk it in the water or use this to actually get the scummy water in, whether it's a running water or whatever, I would want to use this just to keep out all the nitty-gritty stuff. I don't need to be swallowing sand if I don't need to, right? So as it fills up, you're going to pull it out and stuff, and hopefully get some of that muck out of there. Do the best you can, right? And then you add your purification tablets. I always recommend having something like this. But you might not always have that luxury if you're sending out crews to fill up your water for you. So if you're having that done, then you may not have that luxury of getting your water filtered before you have to purify it. So it's kind of a luxury if you're able to do it yourself, and if you have the time, of course. And time is always a commodity on light infantry operations. So, always good to carry it in case. It weighs next to nothing. So, anyways, next thing is you want to have a purification method. Now, you can carry like a small eyedropper of bleach and carry it in here. But I like to have purification tablets. They work the best because that's exactly what they're designed for. And so I just have a little bit of green tape. You can also use electrical tape. And I just have two tabs right here. So one of these little tablets is good for a quart, so I could actually fill this up and purify it twice with what I have here. Now with these ones right here that come in the little packs, if you don't have a knife on your line 1 gear, then you want to go ahead and put in a little pre-cut. Get some scissors and just make a little starting slit. That way you can just, tear it open. And that's probably the best thing to do anyhow, is just have a quick rip kind of cut in it for each of the tablets, right? So I tape them on the bottom because that way I can still use this. I can still stand it up. It's not impeding anything. It's not impeding me putting a canteen cup over it or anything else. So that's the reason why I do that. So that's pretty much it. The purification method for this would be when you put in your purification tablets, blah, then you want to shake it around for a little bit and leave it for 20 minutes. At that point, you don't drink it. What you do is you actually loosen the cap, let the water dribble out a little bit, just a tiny amount, just to wet the threads out. And that way, none of the bacteria that might have gotten into the cap or whatever is going to spread and be the reason you actually get Giardia, right? And then you leave it for a couple of hours. Now, if you are not letting it go through its full purification cycle, then it's going to taste like chlorine. But by the time it's actually done with it, you shouldn't taste much of anything out of water. And I've used purification tablets a good amount, and they typically will not have much of any flavor to them. Bleach I can't say the same for. So purification tablets would be the way to go. And so some people would say that they don't really mind the taste of the chlorinated taste if they drink it early, but you haven't let it really go through its full purification ritual, so you are taking a risk. But again, we talked about time. Time is always a commodity on operations, so sometimes you just got to deal with it. In Vietnam, a lot of times they wouldn't filter it, they wouldn't purify it or anything. They would just fill it up and drink it because they were that desperate when they were doing jungle operations. And they were carrying like 6 to 8 quarts of water for, 5-day operations. So when they got it, they did the best they could, and they would send out teams to go ahead and grab it. So that was like Marine recon and force recon operations. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about drinking a canteen. So we talked about purifying it and everything else. It can take a few hours to fully purify it, but by then, now it's time to drink it. So here's my recommendation. You need to get used to not sipping water. Sipping is not a good idea on operations. Why? Why would we fill our canteens all the way to prevent sloshing if all you're going to do is take a sip out of this and now the thing's going to be able to slosh and, be an echo chamber? No. You wait until you can actually drink an entire canteen and then you chug it. We actually drilled that in boot camp. In the morning, we drink a canteen. In the middle of the day, we drink a canteen, and at night, we would drink an entire canteen. Half of it was to help with, keeping us hydrated and making sure that we always had enough water on board. But the other half was to drill us that a canteen is either full or empty. We were not allowed to have any sloshing or anything like that. It was noise discipline all the way, which is actually a pretty good idea. So, it is what it is, but when you're actually using canteens in the field, make sure you're drinking the entire thing. Wait until you can drink the entire thing. Don't be sipping here and there. So, you're really not that dehydrated if you can't drink an entire canteen and still want more, all right? Just saying from experience. So, now let's talk about some canteen covers. So, well, really just one. So you have the Molly ones that they have today that have, a pocket on each side. That seems pretty convenient, but in reality, I'll take the Alice covers every time. Why? Because they work in all temperatures, and that is a huge benefit, especially with summer coming up, because guess what you can do with these ones? If you want them to stay cool, you wet down this furry material, splash some water in it, and keep it wet. And as this stuff is evaporating, it'll keep the canteen cool. Likewise, if you keep it dry in winter, it'll keep it pretty warm, especially if you had it filled with some warm water. So, it is what it is. But, the Molly canteen pouches, as far as the ones I've seen, they don't have that feature. They don't have that ability to work in all different temperatures. And I certainly don't see that with Camelbacks. Now, the tube can stay warm, but that doesn't mean that the area that connects the tube to the bladder is actually going to stay warm. So, it is what it is. But you can take a canteen and you can actually place it in a pocket and, keep it near the body and, keep it from freezing. And that's a huge benefit if you live in areas that actually reach, freezing temperatures like 10 degrees or even lower. So, that's a huge benefit. Alright, so that pretty much does it for canteen TTPs. I mean, there's other things we could go into, like water collection teams and stuff like that, but I think that's kind of irrelevant. But that's kind of a whole different subject entirely. But anyways, let me know what you think about this video in the comments below, and you guys have a good one.